Radio, let's see, is it working?
It's been a while. I've been an old man for far too long.
Hold up. Right! Let's get to it.
Don't worry, fellas. I'm gonna be doing some more study today.
And you're gonna be needing one of these. Oh. Nice. Now, I don't know how well that went through, but oh well. Principles of art. Where did we leave off last time? We stopped at lines. We're at a different spot. Yes, we did. Points. What up? We did points and dots and lines. Shapes and volumes, huh? Shapes and volumes. Negative element. So the negative element of form is space. Wait, so negative element is space, and then you got positive element? Equals form. So form, so from what I've understood of what he said, the form is essentially the dots and lines that we've been using so far, and space is the area around it.
Damn.
Anyway, getting back to it. Oh. So the more things with form on the canvas means there's less space. Well, obviously, but well, obvious? How is that obvious? Hmm. So, the general gist of it is shapes, which are 2D, which are like lines and dots, and squares, circles, and, you know, a shape, and volumes, which are 3D, which are like cubes, rectangular prisms, and such. Characters are equal to form because you're placing them in space. You have to take space away to put these things in. So form is any positive value we put on the canvas opposite of space. Yes, so the positive element is equal to form, the negative element is space. Positive and negative? Well, I guess that makes sense because he was talking about how he was taking away and then adding again. Where if you have if you have a character taking up most of the space, there's now less space. Which kind of seems obvious now that I think about it, but let's keep going. Hmm. Oh. Forgive me. He was talking about how this how one of these art pieces that he was seeing was just the play thing of this guy. Oh. Dots and shapes, yeah. I think it's this piece of art here. How it was, the experiments of an artist experimenting with lines, dots, and shapes. Now that you mention it, he's kind of right. There aren't any volumes here. Only lines, dots, and shapes. That's actually kind of interesting. Hmm. Makes me wonder how he did it. There are definitely layers here, as in he put one layer on, and then he put another layer on, and then he put another layer on. Maybe that was tape. Is this spray paint? It could be spray paint. But isn't that nice to look at? Interesting. Even though it's not. Something nice about seeing the works of other people trying to learn how to do art as well. It's kind of nice that they are not so far away from me. Yeah, that's a good piece of painting. Painting, huh? So, from what he was saying then, in the video that I'm watching, shapes can be technically geometric or organic, and he wanted to add abstract as well, but abstract usually comes more under organic, so he put it as organic plus abstract. Now, geometric he was talking about how geometric shapes are usually unnatural shapes, like squares, circles, triangles, that don't form naturally or easily in nature, and are really... Enough. Yeah, sorry. That's the end of the sentence. And how each shape has its own feeling. Well, it conveys a certain type of feeling. As in, the square is stability, the circle is movement, the triangle is instability. I just put a rectangle there because I wanted to. And organic is more difficult. Oh, that's right. The geometric, just going back to that for a second, seems to be easier to recreate mathematically than organic, and that's why it's more geometric than organic. And organic may be able to be communicated mathematically, but it'll be way more difficult. But it's also things in nature, and that's why it's called organic, because nature is never really geometric. I think his example here was of an example of abstract, which was the person on the human on a bath sign, though it's not anatomically correct. It's a shape, but also not a shape. Well, it's a shape, but it's like geometric and organic, so it's basically abstract, but it's more abstract than geometric because it's got a humanoid shape to it. And then he was talking about how M's things that are symmetrical, like geometrically symmetrical, but then we always lead ourselves like leaves sometimes, but then we always lead ourselves to having a look at what their flaws are. I think that's what he was talking about. Anyway, back to the video. Shit. Alright, we're moving to the 3. Hola. It was a bit of a tough one to actually try and digest. So essentially what he was talking about there was, when it comes to volume, the more we try and make something 3D in a drawing, the more realistic it may seem to us because we live in a 3D world. And when compared to, then he talks about distance, like for example, if I were to draw a flat thing here, but then I were to draw a house on it. The house is 3D. We would pay more attention towards the house as it is being 3D. Then, let's say that he had like mountains in the back. That was his example anyway. To us, it would seem that having the house in the front, even though it is, let's say this was an environment itself, instead of just being a drawing. Let's say that in real life you were to see a house and then you see mountains at the back. Shut up. Anyway, let's say that in real life, the closer a volume is towards you, the more emphasis and the more the volume will want to pop out at you and take your attention. Well, not necessarily take your attention, but it was like, how does he describe it? It's because who messaged me? I will not look. Anyway, because we live in a 3D world, given that the 3D volume that is closest to us, we will be looking at easier because we can move around it easier. And then with the 3D things behind us, like let's say it's easier to see me when I rotate like this. But if I were to, let's say that this wall behind me was like really far away, it would look 2D instead of 3D because, you know, it'll be harder to be able to look around to make it look 3D with this volume. So that's generally why it looks different. Because let's say that these mountains are really far away from the house, then essentially they look 2D because we can't actually get the 3D aspect off of them because they are so far away. But this house is closer to us, so we can make it more 2D. 3D. So let's see, what else does he have? Why does he look like that, bro?
When I wake up in the morning when I haven't taken a swig of water yet.
That's so stupid. He's from Mexico. Wait, elements or principles? Wait, go back, go back. Oh, I see. Wait, so they are not... Alright, so they are not elements of art. Art. Okay. So... Optical... What? Oh, wait, so that was interesting. Elements with great mass. The elements with great mass have a stronger... Elements with great mass have a stronger pull for your attention. Nice. What we're saying is weight and mass is not actually a thing that can be, you know, well, a thing that can be put on It's more of like, you can't actually create weight and mass in a drawing, but rather you can create the perception of weight and mass based on the elements that you're using on it. For example, the weight and mass are properties of volumes, but they're not actually elements of art by themselves. An example of this is, I guess, when you make a bowl look like it's made of metal, and then a bowl you make look like a cloud. You think the bowl made of metal, because it's got more involved with it, I guess, maybe, that it looks heavier than the bowl made of a cloud? Not too sure. Yeah. So it can only be 2D. So we can only hint at mass while drawing, because it's not actually a thing. We're not actually putting any mass anywhere. So it's called visual mass and weight to an element. So we can add. That's interesting. So size, color, and value. We can add visual mass. What was it? Onto an object. Mass plus weight 2 and meant through size, color, and value, right? Yeah, color, size, color, alright, so what I just found out is elements with great mass have a stronger pull for your attention. We can add visual mass plus weight, so not actual mass, to an element through the use of size, color, and value. Well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, if you added a bunch of shading to something to make it look like it's shading to something, it could be perceived as being heavy. I mean, imagine trying to remember any of these cases where, let's say that you're reading a manhwa, or you're reading, or you're watching an anime, and you see a really big obstacle, or at least a perceived big thing, like a giant wall, but in actuality, it is just a really big. It's just a rectangle. But the way that they make it look like as if it's big is by making the character really small. Whoops. By making the character really small. Like, really small. And then have that object being shaded in a way that makes it look vastly superior in size to the character that's small. But they just made the character look small next to a rectangle that's bigger. And they used the elements of size, color, and value. That makes sense. To imply that this wall is massive, and a massive thing must be heavy, right? Nice. That's pretty cool. Like the, why does it keep reminding me of those, like, walls from Naruto? I can't even remember what they're called. They got, like, faces on them or something. Okay, so the less shading on something, the more flat we think of it to be, and the more flat we think it to be, the less mass we think it has. Okay. So the opposite can happen as well. If we added enough shading to make it look like it's 3D, then we can assume, well, we will perceive it to have mass of some kind. That's interesting. Hmm. I was drawing that one thing without even knowing about it, without even thinking about it. So silly. Alrighty. Nice. So to go over a quick recap, because you weren't here, because it's the end of the stream now. The principles of art number 2. It be shapes and volumes. Shapes are 2D, volumes are 3D, and they both equal to form. Form is any kind of positive value we put on the canvas opposite of space. So we got a positive element, which is form, so we're putting something on, and a negative element, which is space, which is the stuff we haven't that stuff we're putting stuff on. For example, it's actually a very easy example right now. It's this pixel right there. Me doing this is putting form in space. So I'm taking away space to put in form. That's how that works. The space is the canvas itself. The next thing is shapes. They are, to be more specific, are 2D shapes / surfaces, because you know they're flat. and they act as, sometimes they can act as dots. As in, there's a dot. A dot is usually just the focus point, but it's, if a dot gets big enough, it can be perceived as a shape. And the shape can be geometric, organic, or abstract. The geometric one is things that can be mathematically recreated easily, while organic can be still mathematically recreated, but much more difficult. And you would see more of a geometric shape in human civilization, and you'd see more organic shape in nature. And then you've got the last one, which is abstract, which is something that is not, which is both organic and geometric at the same time. But in nature, there does sometimes become symmetry, but we always usually tend to see the flaws in it. The next thing is volumes. It is the perception of, well, volume in space, where we're putting flat instances together to make the illusion of mass. For example, well, I'm not really going to explain that much, but that's fine. The next thing we can talk about is weight and mass, which are not themselves, well, not by themselves elements on their own right, apparently, but they are rather properties of volumes, which is optical mass and weight. So it doesn't have a physical mass on it, but we can visually make it look like as if it had visual mass on it. So elements with great mass have a stronger pull for your attention. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Something that is huge and looks heavy will take more of our attention than something that is small and looks like it doesn't exist. Then we can add visual mass and weight to elements through size, color, and value. Yeah, as I gave my example before earlier, that would be like a massive wall, and your character's like really small, but then you've got like a big wall next to your small character. Well, that's about it. Where's my Krita? Well, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.